Good evening. Welcome to Hasta las Ocho, your half hour of local and regional news, features, weather, and other information. I'm Mike Clifford. Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper has identified the first 16 priority trail projects as part of his Colorado the Beautiful initiative. The initiative aims to connect various hiking, walking, and biking trails in all parts of Colorado to improve access to the outdoors. Benta Birkeland has more from the Colorado State Capitol in Denver.
It wasn't a unanimous decision. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission voted 7-4 against the intentional release of wolves into the state last week. Out of 3 alternatives, says Matt Robbins, CPW spokesperson, version 2 became the final recommendation.
The second version was one that opposed the intentional release of any wolves into Colorado.
CPW does not have the authority to reintroduce wolves into Colorado. Only the state legislature can do that. But Robbins says the resolution does 2 things. First, it supports the 2004 Colorado Wolf Management Working Group's plan for managing wolves that enter Colorado naturally. And it sends a message to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that CPW does not want Colorado included as recovery range for the Mexican gray wolf.
But as well as consider the more in-depth evaluation that would include a binational approach specifically for the Mexican wolf that would include the country of Mexico.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is in the process of updating its Mexican gray wolf recovery plan, which could include Colorado as part of the wolf's range. Robbins says CPW considers that a reintroduction since Colorado is not historic range for the animal. For KDNK, I'm Amy Haddon-Marsh.
Last week we talked with Eva Lee Sargent, Southwest Senior Representative for Defenders of Wildlife, who told us that she actually believes, and the people that she is working with actually believe that southern Colorado has been Mexican gray wolf territory in the past as well. The annual Colorado College Conservation in the West poll was released in early January. The poll surveyed registered voters in 7 western states. Rocky Mountain Community Radio Station KDNK's Amy Haddon-Marsh once again has this summary.
The 2015 Conservation in the West poll examined public views on energy issues, new national monuments, and water, just to name a few. In Colorado, 59% of those polled oppose giving state governments control over national public lands. That same percentage also opposes selling off public lands like national forests to reduce the federal budget deficit. 53% of Coloradans support gradually reducing the number of new coal mines allowed to operate on public lands. 55% approve of continuing drilling and mining at the current pace, but with increased safeguards for land and water. 23% want all drilling and mining halted. 62% of Coloradans support increasing royalty fees paid by mining and oil and gas companies who work on public lands. 75% believe drought is a serious issue, and 77% favor using the current water supply more wisely rather than diverting more water from rivers in less populated areas. 77% of Coloradans want to continue tax incentives for solar and wind energy production. 78% support the renewal of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And ahead of the 2016 election, 77% of Coloradans say public lands, water, and wildlife issues are more important in considering a candidate compared to other issues like healthcare and education. For KDNK, I'm Amy Haddon-Marsh.
And you can find complete results at coloradocollege.com. After years of decline, the number of fatalities on Colorado roadways increased last year. Rocky Mountain Community Radio Station KVNF's Jake Ryan has more.
After a decade of fewer and fewer deaths, 2015 saw 545 people killed in traffic accidents, a 10% increase since last year. Shaylin Bott is the executive director for the Colorado Department of Transportation.
So while the overall trend is still down, a 10% increase in any one year causes us to sit back and say, wait a minute.
Looking at the data, they were able to see some standouts. Almost a fifth of all traffic deaths last year were motorcyclists, a new record. The year's fatalities were also concentrated in some counties. Jefferson, Weld, Denver, and El Paso counties were home to over 200 traffic deaths. Statewide, alcohol was also involved in 1 out of 3. One statistic loomed even larger, though, than alcohol.
Another big percentage, almost 50%, of the vehicle fatalities were unrestrained. The data is clear. Where there is a primary seatbelt law, the fatalities go down.
Right now in Colorado, officers can't pull a driver over for simply not wearing a seatbelt, but they can be fined if they're pulled over for something else. Even then, though, it's only in the front seats. Getting a law through won't be easy.
We know that this is effective. We also know that it is politically unpopular. I've talked to the governor, and I think what we want to do is we want to spend this year educating folks around the seatbelt so that it's not a just do this because of the data or just do it because we know these things. We want to reach out, find out why people are resistant to it, find out how other states have been successful, and craft it and maybe next year take a run at this.
As for the reason for the rise in traffic fatalities, a pinpoint answer isn't known. Fatalities are more common in rural areas where congestion is low. The low price of gasoline may be putting more drivers on the road, too. CDOT and the state police are focusing on education and DUI enforcement and community engagement. For KVNF, I'm Jake Ryan.
Our guest today is filmmaker John J. Valadez. He's a longtime Peabody Award-winning filmmaker, 2 Emmy nominations, written and directed a dozen nationally broadcast documentary films for PBS and CNN over the past 18 years. And he is going to be in Alamosa at Adams State University at 7 p.m. Tuesday, January 26th to show and talk about his film, The Head of Joaquin Murrieta, Lynching, Legends, and Love in the Wild West. And thanks for talking with us today. It does sound like this film is part of an effort to bring some of those underknown, underexamined stories to light more. Are there any particular parts? We talked about the actual legend or truth or both of Joaquin Murrieta. Are there any other stories in this particular film that you'd like to mention briefly?
Well, I guess, one of the things that came up in the film that I thought was so interesting is the film is built around a road trip. I'm in the film, and in the film I get this severed head, the purported head of Joaquin Murrieta, is sent to me in the mail. Okay,
now
and so I decide that the right thing to do is to travel across the country and go to the place where Joaquin was murdered in the summer of 1853 and bury the head there. And in so doing, bury this painful chapter in American history. And along the way, I make these different stops, right? One of the stops I make is in the town of Goliad in Texas. And there they have what is probably the most famous tree in all of Texas, the hanging tree of Goliad County in front of the courthouse. And there, about 100 Mexicans were lynched in that tree. We don't really even know the exact number. It could be a little more. It could be less. We don't even know, right? But somewhere around 100 were lynched in that tree, and across Texas and in many western towns, they all had hanging trees, and more often than not, it was blacks or Native Americans or Mexican Americans or people who were social outcasts who were lynched in these trees. And it was a way of basically, number one, I guess, keeping people in their place, and number two, scaring and intimidating a population so that you could take their land and that you could subdue them and exploit their labor. And I think we understand that in the context of African Americans. I mean, people are pretty familiar with slavery and, and with Jim Crow and, and of course the civil rights movement. But what people are much less familiar with is that a very similar story transpired all across the West with Mexican Americans, that Mexican Americans were often segregated in schools. They had to go to separate schools in many places, that there were covenants attached to mortgages on homes to determine the race of the person who could live in a particular neighborhood, that Mexican Americans were excluded from many public facilities like restaurants and swimming pools and, that sort of thing, and of course discriminated against in terms of voting. But it's an entire history that most Americans are unaware of. And I think the point is not that anybody should feel guilty or bad, because none of us did those things. But I do think that that having an honest appraisal of the past is important for us when we think about what kind of future we want to build together.
Yeah, we can't just ignore that stuff either.
Yeah, no.
It happened in honest discussion.
And also honestly acknowledge that we are not responsible for the sins of our fathers, right? That it's up to us to build a better future for ourselves and for our kids, but based on the knowledge of what happened in the past. It's interesting in the film. One of the stops I make, I end up in Las Cruces in New Mexico. Sure. And my family used to own a lot of land in around the El Paso Las Cruces area. And I had heard through my own family, oral history, that my great grandfather had been lynched and that we had lost our land. I'm Mexican American, and so I stop in Las Cruces to find out more about my family history. And what I learn actually is that my family acquired all of the land that we owned because we had taken it from Native Americans in the area. And so I guess, for me, there's a revelation in the film, which is, history is not a black and white proposition. If we go back far enough, we will find, enough guilt and enough blood to go on pretty much everybody's hands. So we should be very careful about getting on our high horse about things. Maybe the thing to do is to, recognize and acknowledge the history and try to figure out how we can build a more fair and equitable future for everybody, because the past is over. It's already happened. But what we can do is we can try to make sure that that people who are disadvantaged because of that history really have the kinds of opportunities that will make our nation strong going forward.
Sure, and I think the first step sometimes, though, is acknowledging some of that history and knowing about it. And, this press release talks about the diverse subjects that you've covered in your films, but I think they do have, my impression is, something in common, is bringing some of those stories to light. Things like the false imprisonment of a leader of the Black Panther Party, Latino gangs in Chicago, segregation in America's schools, a history of Latino civil rights, genocide of Native Americans in the Southwest. I saw something online with Los Lobos, it looked like, that you had helped put together. How, to get a little personal here, but, how is it that you came to be making films and making these kinds of films, and why do you think that's important?
Wow, well, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I really have an answer. I think part of the answer is in the film, the head of Joaquin Murrieta, which is, there's a part of the film where I talk about growing up, and when I was growing up in Seattle, I got a nickname from the other kids that I was growing up with, and they called me Spick, right? And I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the word, but it's a derogatory term used as a kind of a put down to Latinos. And, not that I came away from that experience, emotionally scarred or anything. I really, I'm fine, but what I think it did do is it did get me thinking about race and identity and who's in and who's out and tribalism in the United States and what it means to be American and what it means to be a Spic or a Mexican versus an Anglo and it started me off on a trajectory of thinking about those kinds of things, not in an angry way, but in a way that made me want to understand more fully the American experience because I understood that it was not a simple proposition. And so I, as I began to make films, I began to make a lot of films about my own experience as a Latino, about my own community. And in so doing, I think I've rediscovered, or it's been a process of rediscovering what America is, another side of America. And because, the Latino experience is the American experience, just as the Anglo experience is the American experience and the African-American experience is, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think what's ended up happening is when I found myself in the documentary world, I soon discovered that there were almost no Mexican-American filmmakers making documentaries about the Latino experience. And it seemed to me that there was a great need there, not because it was promoting Latinos, but because it was promoting this great diverse experience that we call America and bringing more voices into the chorus of who we are. So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
A lot of it. I think the other thing, though, I'm curious about is you mentioned kind of finding yourself in the documentary world, but what is it about this particular art form that drew you to it instead of writing books or painting pictures or whatever other way of communicating you could have found?
Oh, well, I do play guitar and sing,
Uh-huh.
and I am working on a book right now with the University of Oklahoma Press. So, I do other things, but I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy. I guess for me, I enjoy education and I enjoy learning, and it gets me excited. And so when you make a nonfiction film, what you're doing is you're kind of getting a master's degree in whatever subject, and you get to explore and talk to really smart people who introduce you to all kinds of knowledge that you may not be aware of. And it just expands your mind and your vision of the world, and you get to travel all over the place, right? I mean, I've traveled all over the country and all over the world. Working on films, researching them, etc. And it's a very, in some ways, it's a very romantic and wonderful way to make a living, and also to contribute to the civic discourse of the country. And that's also deeply meaningful. So, it's fun. That's
Right.
what it is.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I enjoy about this job as well, is talking to smart people and learning things from them. Is there any, I could probably talk all day, but it wouldn't make the best radio show necessarily. So is there anything else you want to mention before we finish up and I talk a little more about the details of the screening at Adams State University?
I don't know. I just hope that people come out and see the film, and I just become very concerned, I think, in this day and age. Not only do we live in a technological revolution, but we're also living in an age in which the ethnic identity of the nation itself is being redefined. And for a lot of people, that can make them feel uncomfortable, and it can be kind of scary. But I hope that this film and the other films that I do help to ease some of that. And we can understand that there are many ways of being American, but at the core, we all have shared values of belief in democracy and liberty and that we're all part of one great country. And but change is in the air, and we need to deal with it in a positive way and be weary of politicians and those who would use the language and speech of hate to try to divide us in ways where Americans turn on one another. And I don't think that's not the way to go.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I don't think we need to even name any names there. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I know what and who you're talking about, although there's a lot of folks who could be accused of that kind of thing. But well, thanks for talking with us, John J. Valadez, filmmaker. His film The Head of Joaquin Murrieta, Lynching Legends and Love in the Wild West, will screen at Adams State University on Tuesday, January 26th at 7 o'clock in McDaniel Hall, room 101 on the Adams State campus in Alamosa. The event is free and open to the public. It's a 30-minute film, or this screening is, right?
Yeah. It's a short film, but it's jam-packed with information. It's pretty exciting, and I'll be there to give a talk and answer questions and have a conversation.
All right, and we didn't even get to mention, but you'll also I think Prejudice and Pride is going to be screening in late March or early April as well. Just prior to doing this show, we did a 6-hour series for public television called Latino Americans, which is a history of Latinos in the United States. And I'm going to be doing quite a number of screenings in Colorado starting next week. I'll be at the Colorado College. I'll be at Colorado State in Boulder. I'll be all over the state. So if you want to Google it or something, you can probably track me down. Yeah. Do you have those listed on your website or something?
I don't. It's like I'm so busy.
I understand.
But I can.
Like you say, Google. Okay, that'd be great. So yeah, if you're curious about one of those other appearances in Colorado, let me know here at KRZA. And again, Tuesday, January 26th, 7 o'clock, McDaniel Hall, room 101, free and open to the public screening with John J. Valadez. Thanks for talking with us. Some other events and announcements around the area. The Valley Community Chorus is open to all adults and high school students. The spring theme is Pop Goes the Music, celebrating popular music from the 20th and 21st centuries. No auditions are required. The first rehearsal begins at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 16th in the Adams State University Music Building. For more information, you can call 719-206-3081. The San Luis Valley Tourism Association invites all amateur photographers to enter the annual photo contest and win money. Submissions should be in one of 3 categories: cultural, natural, or recreational, and must be taken within the San Luis Valley. Deadline for submissions is Monday, February 15th. You can submit photos to sanluisvalley.org at gmail.com. Photos should include photographer's name, location of photo, and contact information. The Sled Hockey Special Clinic will be having a special sled hockey event this Friday, January 22nd. All ages and abilities are welcome. Please remember to dress warm for the rink. If you have protective gear, please bring it with you to the Taos Youth and Family Center. The event will start at 5:15 p.m. and run until 6:45 p.m. For more information, you can call 575-741-1135. The Antonito Seniors will hold a Winter Wonderland dance this Friday, January 22nd. The dance will take place at 701 Main Street in Antonito from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Music will be provided by Bernal Maestas and Alex Lopez. You can bring your favorite snack to share. For more information, you can call 719-376-2294. Free to the community, the Alamosa Public Library invites you to movie night at your library. The movie Minions will be showing on Friday, February 12th at 7 p.m. There will also be free popcorn. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has been involved in fire mitigation efforts along North and South Crestone Creeks on the Baca National Wildlife Refuge. Prescribed burns will occur during the period of January 25th through March 18th. Adjacent neighbors and towns should be aware of plumes of smoke temporarily generated as a result of this prescribed burning. Any neighbors or individuals that may require special consideration or assistance in the event that unplanned smoke issues arise are encouraged to call the refuge manager at 719-256-5527. And Taos County Solid Waste Department has placed a bin in front of the county courthouse and is accepting clean Christmas trees for recycling until the end of the month. The Taos Recycling Center will also be accepting Christmas trees. They are located at 201 Bertha Street. You can visit the town's website for hours of operation at taosgov.com. Weather in north central New Mexico. Tonight, mostly clear, lows 0 to 10. Tomorrow, partly cloudy, not as cold, highs in the mid-30s to lower 40s. Tomorrow night, partly cloudy, lows 5 to 15. Saturday, partly cloudy, highs in the upper 30s to mid-40s. West winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Saturday night, partly cloudy, lows 15 to 25. Sunday through Tuesday, partly cloudy with a slight chance of snow. Highs in the upper 20s to the 30s, lows 5 to 20. Tuesday night, mostly clear with a slight chance of snow, lows 5 to 15. And Wednesday in north central New Mexico, mostly sunny, highs in the 30s. For the San Luis Valley, tonight, partly cloudy, lows 4 below to 5 above 0, light winds. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, highs in the lower to mid-30s, light winds. Tomorrow night, partly cloudy, lows 5 below to 6 above 0, light winds. Saturday, mostly sunny, highs in the upper 30s, light winds. Saturday night, partly cloudy, lows 3 to 11. Sunday and Sunday night, mostly cloudy, a 10% chance of snow, highs in the lower to mid-30s, lows 4 to 11. Monday, mostly sunny, with a 10% chance of snow, highs near 30. Monday night and Tuesday, partly cloudy, lows 1 below to 5 above 0, highs near 30. Tuesday night, mostly clear, lows 2 below to 5 above 0. And Wednesday, in the San Luis Valley, mostly sunny, highs in the lower 30s. Thanks for being here for Hasta las Ocho this evening. I'm Mike Clifford, and I'll be back tomorrow evening at 7:30 with local and regional news, features, weather, and more. And I'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for A las Ocho. I hope you can join me.